Hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Jens and I'm gonna tie this little fellow with you today. This is a Ahrex fly. I know that when a lot of you think of Ahrex flies or scud flies or whatever you call it, then you think of very heavy flies that weighted with tungstens, bellies or whatever you use, but actually this is the opposite. This is not a floating, but at least a hovering Ahrex fly, and that's because I've added foam inside of it. You can't see it, but there's a foam strip inside around the hook shank. And that is essential for that kind of fishing. I'm using Ahrex flies for. It's at the coast and in the fjords of Denmark, where actually I fish on very low water, and with these hovering flies you can make some great pauses, and it's often in the pauses that the trout is going to take your flies. So that's actually what I like with a lot of my flies, that they're unweighted and you can use an intermediate line just to get it below the surface, and you can fish these extremely slow and on very low water. And another thing I want to show you today is my coffee grinder that I'm just loving. This is an old one I got at a second-hand market, and what I'm using it for is for mixing my own dubbing blends, and that's what I've been using for this fly as well. This is a dubbing made with some SLF squirrel, spikey squirrel I think it's called, in different colors, and I've added some flash and some fibers from a SLF salmon pink dub, the same you use for pattegrisen. This fly is very different for the pattegrees, but I like the dubbing. So yeah, get a cheap coffee grinder so you can mix your own dubbing, and that is a thing that I have added some extra to my fly tying, I think. But yeah, let's tie this fly. Yes, so here it is. This is what we're gonna tie, and it's tied on a Ahrex curved Ahrex hook. I'm gonna put it in a bit bending downwards here, so it's easier to tie, but it's this NS 172 curved Ahrex size 8. And I'm using a thin thread here. It's a Veevus 50 denier GSP thread. And we're gonna start with laying the thread down here. So the materials can stay there where we want them. And I like for my Ahrex flies to come a good way down here on the bend to really get that curve of the fly. And for the tails and the antennas, we're gonna use some feathers. This is from a hen feather, and we're gonna use some strands for that, and maybe about 5 or 6 or something like that. And we measured how long we want them to be, and then we can tie them down. And work the way down here, like this. That's fine. And we can put the antennas in front on at the same time, with the same way to do it. Measure the length, that's about here, and tie it down. Great. Now we're ready for the scud back. You can get that in many different sizes and colors. I'm using a darker green here on this one. Gonna tie it down here. This is gonna be covered with something else, so it doesn't matter that it's super beautiful, but it's important that we get it to lie how we want it. So not too messed up here. I think it's okay. And I'm gonna stretch it here so it's get a bit thinner. I think maybe a millimeter more. Yes, that's fine. And for this shrimp, I'm using for this Ahrex or Scud, what do you call it? I'm gonna use it for sea-run brown trout, and for that kind of fishing, I don't often use weighted flies. Actually, I like when they're hovering in the water column. So we're gonna tie in some foam here, and this is gonna be covered in dubbing afterwards, so it doesn't really matter what color it is. Just a strip I have cut from a larger piece of foam. And tie it down. And also this makes it easier to get that nice profile of the cameras. Oh, I forgot one thing. We can still get it in place. It's the wire. But I'm gonna tie this in at the end, but here we're gonna loose turns around here so we don't squeeze the foam. Then we can tie down the wire. I like to have it on the back side, on the other side of the fly. Yeah, you can tie it in a bit earlier if you want. Now ready for the dubbing. This is a dubbing blender I'm using. It's made of SLF spikey squirrel in some different colors, and I think there's some SLF fluorescent pink, the one you use for, or salmon color, the one you use for pedigrees. And we're gonna work our way up the fly. And again, I'm not using a lot of force here because I don't want to squeeze the foam. And take your time with this. You have to be careful that you cover all the foam. And then we make our way up here. And of course you can use whatever kind of dubbing and colors you like. This is just the colors that I prefer for this one today. This will work fine as a variant of co-op as well, if you use some copper dubbing. Yes. And for the head we're gonna use less dubbing, because we also have to tie in the other materials here at the front. Then we're ready for the scud bag. We're gonna secure it, or just some loose turns up here, so we know that it stays there. And again, be careful that you don't bend or kink the material. It makes it easier to tie in at last in the end. And now we take our rib and work our way downwards. And what I like is to get it an angle on the other side, and then you can have a more straight line on top, and you can use that technique for your shrimps as well. It looks better on the upper side of the fly, that you get more straight turns. And you can try to not get any fibers on the top, or you can save it afterwards with a dubbing needle. And you can still manipulate the scud bag here, so you have it on the top of the fly. Yeah. Great, now I think I can have one more turn here. And then we are at the end. And then tie it in. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna rotate the wires that it will break. Great. Then we have, you can see it actually turned a bit on me here. So I'm gonna turn it back without losing the wire. And when we're cutting it off, we're gonna stretch it again, and then we can take a fine tip scissor and cut close to the thread. Great. I'm satisfied with that. And a couple of turns here in the front, so we get that nice black head. Great, and a whip finish. And then we can cut the thread. I like to secure these with some super glue, or in this case it's UV-resin. There. Great. And take your lamp. And you see these fluorescent fibers, as I mentioned, that I have in this dubbing blend. And if you want to make it look like a better in your box, you can take your finger and then with your nails try to manipulate the feathers so they have this nice little bend. If you use the scissor, it's gonna be more great. That's fine. And you can also give some UV-resin here on the top as well if you want, but I actually like this look of it. yeah, this is my hovering Gammarus or Scud or whatever you call it where you live. And if you like these tutorials that I make like this, then please subscribe to my channel and give this video a like, and I hope to see you in the next video or see you at the coast. Tight lines.